Alright, so good morning everyone. So I just want to check, I don't do a quick time check, so do I still have half an hour?
Yes.
Alright, okay. So morning guys, so this is going to be my first presentation of Korea. For instance, I think I'm coming here for the very first time. Really happy to know there's another group for Scrum, so I'm hoping to come in the next few sessions as well. So I'll just give a quick intro, or I would like to make a quick contract of what I want to talk about in this particular session. And I'm going to be very specific. It's not that I'm going to give you a lot of ideas and a lot of things. It's going to be just small thing that I do with my team that I thought I'll just share with you. So the first thing first. So why do you think I have chosen this topic? You know, it was primarily because I was very cynical when I was being first told that the teams can self-organize. You know, like even now, I have a feeling, you know, like how is it even possible? You know, like these are the questions that I always have. And one of the primary reasons why I've kind of explored on this particular topic is also because over the years I've always seen that when we talk about TDD, when we talk about CI, when we talk about pair programming, there's a lot more clarity in terms of what we have to do because it's a lot more measurable. I can always measure and see how exactly it is. But what about the self-organizing aspect of the team? So I just quickly thought, you know, let's do some exploration here, let's see how it works. So this is how it has all started. So if you understand from this slide, you understand this metaphor, like Alice in Wonderland, Alice in the laboratory? It's almost like that because I really don't know what the self-organizing team is. You know, I really don't know if it's just an illusionary idea or if it really exists that way. I mean, so that's the whole metaphor here. So let's see. I think I'm going to go through the whole process with Alice and the rabbit hole. That's what I want to do here. So I want to start with this. So this is one of the very fascinating books I've ever read, which is called The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. Anyone who have read this book? You have? Yeah. It's a very brilliant book. It talks about the origins of species, you know, like what we actually want and what is our motivation and how we evolve and all that. There's a very interesting quote here which says that let's try to teach generosity and altruism because we are born selfish. You know, because it says that whatever we do, we always have a selfish motive. We have a particular motive behind doing something. If that is the case, my primary question is, how exactly can 5 to 10 people or 7 plus or minus 2 people can have a common goal? Each one of us are looking for our own motives, and each one of us know this is what we want to get. If that is the case, how do we even get to a point where we can call our teams as self-organizing? So with this question, I'll also quickly introduce myself. So my name is, I have rather a very long name. It's like, as with many South Indians here, so my name is Karthik Kamal and hence people call me as KK, just to make sure. I mean, it's also easy on my customers, you know, they don't really work so hard. So this is about me, and I don't think my Twitter handle is visible here. It's called KKB, KAAY, it's from the Bumblebee idea. So just to talk about myself, you know, I love reading, you know, I love dancing. I'm a cyclist as well. And I work with Agile FAQs, and I have been right now consulting with McAfee India for a couple of teams here. And what is about me? So I have 2 small startups here, as in one of them is an NGO called Live and Let Live. So we operate in Bangalore and Chennai, and the other one is a book club. If you guys are interested, you can just drop it. It's called Yeah. So with this, I'll just quickly move on to the next slide. So like I asked you, you know, if we are selfish, how do we work as a team? So that is the primary question. So where does it come from? Have you heard of this? Nash equilibrium? Someone? Yeah? Yeah, well, most of you would have watched this movie called Beautiful Mind, John Nash's idea. So it comes from there. So for a couple of beings, like say a group of individuals to work together, all we have to do is we have to just look at a cooperative game. So what is a cooperative game? I really love this thing which says, you know, you can just read it. It just says you're about to receive a hug. So both arms over the top, both arms underneath, and left arm high and the right arm low. And then your right arm high and left arm low. So these are the various possibilities how I can possibly hug a person. So if one person is going to choose both arms over the top, it actually means that the other person has to choose the other way around. But if that is not going to happen, the hug is not going to happen. Hug failed, right? So that's exactly a cooperative game. So when we say a particular system is going to be in Nash's equilibrium or a Nash equilibrium, it means that the partners in the game, the partners who are going to play together, they're going to be cooperative, and each of their decision is based on what the other teams or the other team members decide to do, right? So that seems like a plausible solution. You know, let's say if I'm a selfish being, you know, which I think I am. So if I'm a selfish being, if I want my own motives in whatever it is, and if I want another person to have their own motives, the only way in which we can play a successful game is to play a cooperative game. That's like a fair assumption for me. So with this, you know, I just started my search. So like I said, the possible solution is a cooperative game. So I thought I'd also do some online search, like most of us are hooked onto the online sites now. We have so many portals, so many forums. I thought let's do some search and see what happens with respect to this one. When I searched for self-organizing team, you can see these are the number of articles that I saw in Google, which is like humongous. If I have to really do a search, it's going to take me a while for me to really understand it. Even if I'm going to read it, the question is, will I really understand what a self-organizing team is? That's a question. So what I just did this word cloud. So I just picked a couple of articles and I just tried to see what are the common words that I see with respect to self-organizing teams. Like you see the common time and again visited jargons, everything we heard, like, the teams have to be supportive, the teams have to work together, the teams have to trust each other, they should have ownership, lot of words. But the irony here is, when I talk about ownership, it's not the same for everyone. When I talk with my teams, I know that when someone says what ownership is, it's not the same thing what others think it is. So this is the nature of the teams, because we are human beings. We are very subjective elements. We are very qualitative with respect to how we look at things. Unfortunately, the crux of any agile team, if you have to really be agile, it lies totally on the team. Of course, there are practices, there are like other processes, there are other frameworks. But for us to reach the agile state, we have to be like that. Another interesting idea which always comes to my mind is every time I talk with many teams, they say, we are these so-called agile teams. So that is again another concept which I don't understand. When someone says I'm a so-called agile, what do you actually mean by that? Either you're agile or you're not agile. Because agile, as I understand, there's only one meaning to agile. So which means there is a possibility that it's a transient state. Or it could be something which is very unstable, right? So let's move on. So what next? So I also wanted to see what Stack Overflow talks about self-organizing team. I believe, how many developers are here? Yeah, so I used to be a developer once. I used to work for Ericsson. So I remember, I was like totally dependent on Stack Overflow for so many things. Even now I do, to an extent. So I just thought, what do these techies really think about self-organizing team? Because how much ever we talk about process, what do these guys think about it? Interestingly, I just had only 5 responses for this particular question. Which is like, considering the amount of traffic you have in Stack Overflow, it's like super less. It's like, which means what I understood was nobody really cares. Nobody really cares what a self-organizing team is, because it's not too important. Maybe I'm searching in the wrong side. That is also possible. So one of the questions which has the topmost answer is, it says the evolution of behaviors that emerge from the interaction of independent agents. So which means it says that a self-organizing team is an evolving behavior. So now again the question is, what do you mean by an evolving behavior, right? So all these things has been the fundamental driving factor for me to really understand what these self-organizing teams are. Another interesting thought here is Coda. You guys know Coda, right? I've always believed that I have answers for everything in Coda, but surprisingly there was not even a single article about self-organizing team in Coda. So I'm like still surprised. I hope someone will go and ask that question, and few people will at least answer.
The reason of Coda is not having is it's more of an informal thing.
Yeah, it is.
That is not mainly related to the programming or the process story.
Yeah, right, it's not. But of course, like I said, I've always believed that I have answers for everything in Coda. There's always been opinions. You're never short of opinions or anything. There have been like so many people saying how it works and all that. But anyway, so finally what I look at it, the crux that I got was it is words, and more words. That's all I could derive by doing an online search or by reading articles. There were like a lot of scholarly papers which said, possibly when I say a self-organizing team, there will be like these kind of players and all those things. But still, what I realized was, this was not helping me with respect to how can I make a team self-organizing. Now, the two questions are, what are the meanings of these words? What do I actually mean by a self-organizing team in first place? And when we talk about ownership, when we talk about all these words that we associate with a self-organizing team, I want to understand what it actually means. But the irony here is, the words are the limiting factors, if we all understand that. It's like, how much ever we experience, how much ever we feel, we can only express so much with words. Probably that is one of the factors which is not helping us to actually reach a state where we are self-organizing. Now, what is the second question? How does it feel to be in a self-organized team? That's again a fundamental question. So we have always spoken about being a self-organizing team, but I would like to understand how does it feel to be in a team, because as human beings, we are based on feelings. Most of the things that we do, most of the things that whether we like it or not, that's how it is. We are beings who needs or who appreciates feeling, and we are both cognitive as well as we are very, very emotional. That's always there. So now my philosophy was, instead of going through all these things, I decided to ask my team. Instead of doing an online search, instead of asking the experts, telling them what a self-organizing team is, I just thought of asking these team members, what a self-organizing team could be. So how do I do it? So now the question is, what is the best way to ask them? I can just directly go and ask them saying, tell me what is a self-organizing team. Trust me, I've done it. How many of you have done it with your teams? Yeah? So what do they tell you?
Generally comes with more
Actually,
around that trust and coordination, collaboration and things like that, which are again words.
We always get textbook answers.
We always get what?
Textbook answers.
We get textbooks answers. You won't believe me, invariably, most of the teams I've coached with, of course, we talk about all these jargons and those are the fancy words they just hold on to. In their retrospective, when I ask them what went well, they'll say I'm very self-organized. So when I just ask them, why do you say you're self-organized? They don't have answers. It's primarily because we just cling on to these words and sometimes it is actually not what it actually means. So that's why, again, the metaphor of Alice in Wonderland, it says it's very illusionary. It's again our choice to actually live in the illusion or actually explore what it is. So how do we explore? So this is what I tried, this is what I did with my teams. So just to give you another background, I have been training with some of these schools of psychotherapy for a couple of years now. So I've been practicing transaction analysis or something, which I use in my team coaching a lot, especially when I talk to my teams. And one of the other tools that I've been exposed to is called art therapy. So art therapy, what it says is, let me read the definition the way it is. It says that it's a mental health professional that uses the creative process of art making to improve and enhance the physical, mental and emotional well-being of individuals of all ages. It is based on the belief that creative process involved in artistic self-expression help people to resolve conflicts and problems, develop interpersonal skills, manage behavior, reduce stress, increase self-esteem, self-awareness and achieve insight. So I just want to give it the way it is, because the reason is, this is very, very important. So when we say, I'm going to express certain things in words, if I know if that is not sufficient, what is the next better way to do it? So we just thought, okay, why not? Let's try an art therapy here. Let's ask the team members, how do you visualize your team? So I have a very simple 3-step tool that I use with my team, which would help the teams to start the journey of self-organizing team. It's not that they're going to be self-organized in the process, but it makes it a lot more clearer, it makes it a lot more easier. As with Agile, we always believe in visualizing things, right? We always say, visualize things and then see how it goes, because it just gives you a potential to have a conversation around it. So that's exactly what I'm going to do now. So any questions until now, or else I'll just move on to the small 3-step process that I was talking about. Any questions, anyone? Alright, cool. So now what is this 3-step process? So it's going to be visualize, discuss and then the contract. So what I mean by visualize here is, so it's as simple as, I'm just going to ask my team, what is your self-organizing team? How will your Agile team look like? If there are people who are very creative, they'll come up with their own solution. In fact, when we started this whole idea, we just thought, since it started with the whole idea of anatomy of a self-organizing team, in fact thought, let's give a human anatomy to it and let's say, what is the head of your team, what is the leg of the team and all that. But I just realized that that is also a limiting factor. The moment I say, this is the way you have to think, I'm just limiting the teams by saying that, okay, you think this particular way, I'm already directing them, or in a way, I'm just kind of telling them, anchoring them in the process, telling them, just do this. But instead what we decided, okay, let's leave it to them and just ask them to visualize whatever way they want to do it. Let's say, let's see what they come up with. So that was the first step that we did, which was visualizing your team. And what is the second step? It was obviously to discuss, talk and to converse. So what do I mean by this is, the moment you actually visualize a team, there are a lot of things the team members talk about. What are the advantages of doing this? Obviously there are team members who are very vocal and there are team members who are not so vocal. And even the ones who are vocal, they really don't know what they're talking about. So half the time there are words like we say this is what it is, but we actually don't know what it is. So we try to visualize it and we say, oh, this is how I look at my team. And then it gives them a lot of clarity about what they exactly mean by what they're saying, right? So it brings out the ulterior. So what do I mean by ulterior is, so there are always social messages that we give, and there are always things that I actually think. So that's the ulterior. So one of the very good examples to understand the ulterior was, so I always used to be a latecomer to college. Until I was in college, I was always a latecomer. I was branded for that. Of course, after work, I've like changed a lot. So my professor, whenever I enter the college, whenever I enter my classroom, the first question he'll ask me is, what is the time? Right? So what does it mean? So what is he asking me? Yes. So, but what was the question? Yeah. So if I have to answer him, what will I answer to him?
I'll answer the time.
Absolutely. But what the unfortunate thing is, the moment you answer with the time, what happens then?
It will explode.
It will explode, right? So which means there is an ulterior motive, and many times, but so obviously, so it's like well understood that the moment someone asks me a question like what is the time when I'm late, and nobody answers, or rather I've seen very few people doing it unless they're blatty and naughty. Otherwise, most of the time all they do is they just say, this happened, that happened, I was stuck in traffic, and so many other excuses. So which means we understand the ulterior whatsoever it is. Even though it was not stated explicitly, as human beings we have the ability to understand what my ulterior motives are. So even when I coach the teams, it's very, very common, and which I understood that it's very significant as well. Like say, especially when it comes to managers, especially when it comes to the superiors in the team, they always believe that they are bad. I have no idea what is this reason. Like at least 80 to 90% of the people I've met, they always have this barrier when it comes to a manager. Whatever a manager says, they always have something behind. They always believe that it is not true. They always believe that there is something they're going to ruin their life. It's like as bad as that. So that is the ulterior that I'm talking about. So what is the best way to resolve this ulterior? What is the best way?
Be transparent.
Is to be transparent. Is to ask out and open saying, is this what you meant? It's not going to be in a very harmful way, but it's going to really help the team. So similarly, when we talk about self-organizing team, when someone says ownership and all that, I've always seen when I've facilitated this exercise, in the conversation you will see a lot of messages which is being exchanged between the members of the team, and the messages will have ulterior motives. Like let's say there is a particular person who is not coming to their Scrum stand-up meetings on time. That is one of the aspects that they think as a self-organizing team. They will not tell very particularly saying, okay, this particular person in this instant was not coming on time. But instead they would say, hey, there are these people who are not coming on time for offer. It's like because of that our stand-ups is delayed. So what is the point? Like we talk about transparency, we talk about being open. Why not confront the team members in a healthy way? It's again a very tricky part. But the point here is, when you have this conversation, when you discuss about the abilities of the self-organizing team, the first thing that comes out is, it brings out the ulterior motives. Right? So which means when you have some selfish motives, which is like, I don't think selfish is a bad word to begin with, but when I have some motives behind it, we can actually tell them that, okay, this is what I believe, this is what I want from this particular thing. Let's say if I have to do an activity, this is what I want from it. It's a lot more easier to deal with it. And say, what is the second one? It clarifies the expectation. Why? Because I'm going to bring out and open. You remember the hug example that we're talking about? So if someone is going to already tell me, okay, I'm going to keep my hands like this, it obviously means that the other person has to keep their hands down. So that is going to be a cooperative game. So that is going to be a system which is going to be in Nash equilibrium. So that is the whole point. So what is the last one? It realigns the team goal. So like I said, each one of us have our own goals in terms of what we want to do with respect to our career. We say this is where I want to head, this is where I want to do. But we don't talk about it. One of the common examples again with the teams are with respect to the kind of activities they do in a Scrum team. The moment we say we are dealing with Scrum, we're going to be agile and all that, the biggest question that people have is, will I get the big chunk of activities? Will I get the activity that would really add value to my resume? Which is actually a very valid question. And nobody is working for free here. We all want some recognition. We all want some takeaway from whatever we are doing. However, if you don't bring out and open, it's going to be very, very difficult for the team to manage it. It's no way the team will ever be self-organized, because we always have this sense of the ulterior motives and we'll never get forward. You know what I'm talking about? We understand subconsciously, we have this ability to understand what it is. Recently I was having this conversation with my friend. So she was supposed to take leave for one of the occasions, which was her brother's baby shower. Like there was a baby shower, and she didn't want to tell her manager that it's a baby shower. Instead, she wants to tell him that she was unwell, which is like a very common reason which she thought is the most easiest way to get leave. Like tell in the morning that, okay, I was like, I'm feeling busy, so I'm not coming to work today. But when we were having the conversation, all I told her was, see, you know what, like the moment you tell this to your manager, subconsciously you'll understand that you're telling a lie. You don't even have to tell them that this is exactly what it is. We have the ability to do it. Let's make peace with it. So you might as well tell them what exactly it is and then be bold about it. So I believe this is one of the important steps any self-organizing team must take. There are no other options in doing this. If you're really looking at teams who is going to be totally agile, and if they want to move from the so-called agile terminology, I believe they have to be open about everything, including their motives. Now coming to the last step. So this is again important. This is where the role of a coach comes into place. So what I mean by contract is, it's just that, okay, now that I've spoken about what my difficulties are, now that I've spoken about this is what I want, this is what you want, now it might be something totally different from what the team wants. This is very, very likely. So what we do is we just make a small contract. What do I mean by contract here is, we just tell them what is the next small step that we will do to achieve this common goal. Does it make sense? I'm not asking about a big chunk of step, I'm not asking for a big leap. All I'm asking for is the next baby step that I would take in this direction. So how the coach's role is important here. So I have not put in the slides here, but I would like to quickly talk about another concept called contracts, which is from TA again. So while I talk about contracts here, I've mentioned that psychological contracts are important. I'll tell a recent example from one of my coaching experiences. So we all know conflict management, right? So what is the best way to resolve a conflict? Like let's say, can I take him as an example? Yes. If he and I has a conflict, we have a conflict. So what will I do? Can I go and tell her that I have a problem with him? Will you solve it for me? Can I tell the gentleman there? So what will I do? Sorry? Talk face to face, right? Perfect. So this is a brilliant solution which all of us know. But how easy it is to do it? Can you do it? And some of us have the ability and some of us have the strength to go and confront a person and then say, okay, this is what it is. Especially if it's a peer-to-peer relationship, it's even more easier. The more hierarchical it is, the more difficult it's going to be. Because there are other stakes involved. When I say the other stakes, what are the other stakes here? The ulteriors. Most often the ulteriors are what will happen to my promotion, what will happen to my paycheck, will I be stable in this job? Right? And these are the common things which, thanks to the HR policies, we don't talk about it, but we all know that secretly this is the conversation everyone in the organization is having. Right? So we might as well be a little open about it. One of the examples that I want to give is, recently I was talking to one of this team members, it was visibly they were in a conflict. So every time these two members have to talk about something, they just flare up. They just flare up in the meeting. And the best part is they don't even realize it. They don't even realize that they are putting each other down all the time in every other meeting because they are in the thick of it and they don't see it. So when I was having a one-on-one with them, I just told them, can you do this? You wouldn't believe me, it's actually been a month. And since then, they have not spoken about it at all. Why? Because I didn't do a psychological contract with them. What do I mean by a psychological contract is, first of all, I'll just explain this. There are like 3 types of contract, which is your administrative contract, and then you have your professional contract, and then you have your psychological contract. So most often in all the circumstances we do talk about the administrative and professional contract. What do we mean by administrative contract is, let's say when we had a Scrum meetup, we said that okay, this is the place we're going to meet, this is the set of people who's going to come and talk, and this is the time. So that is administrative elements, what kind of administrative arrangements you're going to have to fulfill a particular contract. And what is a professional contract? Do I have the professional role to do it? Let's say in organizational context, sometimes some of the tasks the Scrum Master, it's Scrum Master's responsibility. We do say, right? I mean, you have to just go confront your product owner and say, ask them to de-scope an activity when something goes wrong. So professionally, as per the role, that is a contract that I can make with them. But the important question is, are they willing to do it? I have told them that do this on this particular time, or as in we have agreed that do this on this particular time. We also know that it's their role, responsibility to do it. But the primary question is, are they willing to do it? Because we all know that if they decide to make a Scrum adaptation failure, they all will. You don't have to give them anything. You can give them wonderful processes. You can just make everything super cool, but they will make it a failure. So it's very, very important to talk about it, and that's what we call it a psychological contract. So what we talk to them is, we just ask them, are you comfortable doing it? If you are not comfortable, what is the problem? It's not that it's going to resolve an issue, but it's always like a shoulder to cry to begin with. The moment they talk about it, their ulteriors are out, and it's easy for them to perform the actions that they have to do. So the likelihood of this being successful is very high. So that's what I mean by a psychological contract. Of course, it's always better when we have someone around who actually knows how to do it, because these are human processes and it's very threatening. What I mean by threatening is, in the process, the person might actually put their papers. Like that might be the consequence. So you have to be a little careful with how you actually do it. But as coaches, I'm sure you would have seen a lot of people and you know how to handle the situation. But the crux here is, make a psychological contract and then make your action item. This is not just for this activity. Any kind of activity that you deal with your agile team, this always helps. So this is a 3-step process. So what are they? It's to visualize your agile team. And the second step is to discuss, talk and converse, which is very, very important. And what is the third part? Is to make contract with the team, saying this is exactly what I want to do and this is the next small step. Yeah, so it's pretty much. So I just wanted to, so this is one of the teams who did the exercise and you can see what all things they've came up with. So I want to give you a few tips about what all challenges that you might face in doing this exercise. There will always be people who will not be willing to draw. They might have some reluctance because they believe they're not good at drawing, they're not good at painting, so they may not come and draw. So give them some space, like ask them to write some words, make it more creative, but give them some space, that's a good point. And also if the teams, if you realize that they are not doing it, ensure how you can actually make them do it also. You know your own strategies, how to make them do it. But this is very important for them to have the conversation. Because many times what happens is, what I was talking about, expectation, ownership for one person will be very different about the ownership of another person, what we think as ownership is. Anyway, so why do we do this exercise? So it initiates discussions, so it increases self and the team awareness. So what do I mean by that is, it gives a lot of insights about who we are as a person and who we are as a team, and it's very, very helpful. And it fosters openness, so like I said, there's no way you can actually hide it, but sometimes people still manage to do it so well, so that's where again the coaches can help them. They can ask some leading questions, almost like your root cause analysis, but again in a non-threatening way, because these are human processes. And what is the last part? Obviously it increases better collaboration. Any games, they always do that to teams. So now finally, so these processes are difficult and complex. However, it is important for the teams to go through this process to experience the truth. I'm not even saying to understand the truth, I'm not even saying what it is, I'm just saying to experience the truth, which is very, very important, because that's what is going to stay with us for a long time. So I'm done with my presentation. So I just want to finish with this famous quote from Matrix. You guys have seen the Matrix, the blue pill and the red pill. So it's going to be your choice. So either you're going to pick knowledge or you're going to stay ignorant about what exactly a self-organizing team is. It's a choice is going to be with the teams. I especially like this, I know even if it's going to be a little longer, I want to read the dialogue to you. It says, this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends, you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. Or you take the red pill and you stay in the wonderland and show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Because this is very, very true when we talk about the self-organizing ability of team. It's not as simple as we think it is. Thank you so much. Any questions? Sure.
How do you manage power versus reason? Like for example, if you have 2 team members, you'll have, generally you always have one person that is maybe stronger emotionally or I would say he has a more powerful presence, but the other person perhaps has a more reflective or reason. And if you just throw them in there, the person with more power will generally take decisions versus the person with more reason in that sense. And so how in a self-organizing team can you have reason take over power in these situations?
Okay. So I'll just tell you what I generally do with my team, because this is one of the important dynamics that we always talk about. It's the alpha male behavior, right? We always have alpha males in teams and who constantly make decisions. But when we talk about self-organizing team, it's also true that we say that at different points of time, if different people are making decisions, then it's still okay, which means like we understand or we assume that important people are making decisions. So talking about this, as I rightly said, I think in the initial few days, like when the team starts to self-organize, that's how it will be. There will always be few decisions which the powerful team member is going to make, and it's going to be very, very visible. So what I do with the teams is, the first thing I do is I just have one-on-ones with them, because when I talk about this out and open, it might be a little threatening for them in the very, very first meet. So I usually have one-on-ones with them where I try to talk about this with them, in a very easy way, telling them, do you notice that you are doing it? Because half the time, at least my experience has always been like that, everybody wants to win in an organization. Nobody wants to make a failure here. Everybody believes that they are doing their best. But the problem is, we all think that others are not doing their best, right? So what I usually do is, I just talk to the teams and I ask them, are you doing it consciously? Many times it's very, very subconscious. So like I said, even with the conflict management, when the two people in my team, when they were flaring up, they didn't even realize that they were flaring up in the meetings. So when you just bring it out in open, it has always helped me, because it kind of tones it down a bit. And eventually you will see that one of the team members actually let go at times. And then the other team member also take more ownership. Especially when you do a lot of exercises with the teams, I think it has helped me. But of course, there are no one single answer, but this is one of the processes that I used to follow in my teams, or I still do. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
How do we know if a team is very guidelines or measures that
Oh my God.
to realize if this is self-organized, there is no guideline, there is nothing.
I think you're meeting your sprint commitments.
Yeah.
Every sprint on sprint.
Consistently,
That's measuring your outcome.
consistently meeting the expectations or the commitment that the team did.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
not
more
you
like-
did or me did. The team did. Consistently meeting. That is one of the aspects
Yeah.
which can say, yeah, this team is towards the path of self-organization.
Yeah.
There is no stop of.
Yeah. So that again will be like somewhere midway in the rabbit hole.
That's how we can measure it.
Down to understand what. But still, I'll tell you what I do with some of my teams, because it's also important aspect, the behavioral aspect. So what I do is, I just ask them, because for me, besides commitment, another important quotient is their happiness quotient. I would like to understand from every team member, are they happy working in their team? I don't want to know anything else. I don't want to know any other statistics. All I want to know is, will you continue in this organization and this team? Will you be part of this Scrum? That's exactly the question I would like to ask. So we use this anonymous polling sometimes. We just keep some boxes to make it more interesting. We then color sticky notes and ask them to put whatever colors they want. And it kind of gives me an idea about how exactly the teams are. But these are very subjective again. And another thing that I do is, I think you guys might have heard of this Nico calendar. So basically the idea is, they just have a calendar which is pasted in the team room, like you have your Scrum board, your visual radiators and all of that things. And the team members every day, like what they felt about a particular day, they just go and mark it. If it's going to be like such a bad day, they're just going to mark it in a red smiley. And if it's going to be like very good, it's going to be green. So they've been looking at it for like 30 days. I kind of have a feeling about what the teams actually feel about working in a Scrum team. And the third aspect would be obviously the one-on-ones. So one-on-ones I've always found it to be very powerful, because it gives them a space to talk openly, and especially because as coaches we don't have any stake with them. I'm not going to rate them, I'm not going to give them incentives and all that, so that way it's easier for them to talk to us. So while we do that, I think if we listen, half the times the teams would kind of get on with their own way. And that's the answer I have, and I know it's a big. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else, guys, or is that done? Alright, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Karthik. That was a very interesting presentation. We see those problems every day. Do we agree, whenever you form a new team, there are talented people versus there are people with different mindsets? How many of them, how many of you guys found the presentation interesting and real time? Alright, wow. Can we give one more round of applause for Karthik? Well, I appreciate your participation and answering questions. We also have a couple of sticky notes, and we will use these blue boards if you have any unanswered questions, or you have questions over the time limit, or you have questions over agile practices at your organization. Please use those sticky notes and post them up there. We'll take it, we'll answer it, we'll discuss them all before we leave for the day.